Well, good morning.
Good morning.
It's great to be here. I'm here with Rick Holm, who is our Prairie Doc. He's in the studio ready to answer your questions of a medical nature. Dr. Holm's specialty is internal medicine. He's a primary care physician with the Avera Medical Group Brookings, and he's also a clinical professor at the University of South Dakota's Sanford School of Medicine. Morning, Rick.
Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Bob.
Morning,
Everything going
Bob.
well?
Good morning.
Yeah, I told Bob, I wonder if you've had your fill of Christmas music yet. And he said he's really enjoying it. It's just fine. I think that's my phone ringing. I'm sorry about that.
Bob's running.
Bob's
trying
looking
to
for
answer.
a phone, and I'll just ignore mine.
Yes.
Okay, and turn it off. Sorry
Yes.
about that, folks. These telephones, you got to make sure. I know when I walk in church, I always check my phone because that is embarrassing. You'll be in the middle of a service, and all of a sudden someone's phone is ringing. Not a good thing. But I'm sorry. I usually turn it off when I come in. I didn't turn it off. We're just happy to have you listening. For those of you who may be in the house or just traveled home to be with family, haven't heard this show before, Dr. Holm is here. He can answer any question you might have of a medical nature, and he's really happy to answer your questions. So you can give us a call at 692-1430 if you have anything you'd like to speak of this week. How about you, Dr. Holm? You're always reading medical journals. Is anything new or exciting happening in medicine?
Well, there's always comparisons about what to do for a new stroke, what to do for a heart attack, and there's not anything terribly new. I've been thinking about Christmas expectations. You know, this is the time of the year where we just had the winter solstice, right? How many days ago? One day ago was the
21st, isn't it? Or is
Yeah. So
Yep.
now think about it. The days are starting to get longer. The nights are starting to get shorter. We are at the apex, though, of that long, dark night and the short days. And it's coming around, though. It's coming around. Think about the excitement 10,000 years ago when somebody who really studied the stars and the sun and the seasons could say, we are right here now. This is the time when it's going to start getting warmer again. We have hope for the future. So I have a good Swedish friend who sends me Swedish rituals. And of course that's up there north where you see a lot. You see a drastic change in the seasons. The days get much longer starting now. And it's interesting that at Christmas time, their major celebration is Santa Lucia, or
Santa Lucia.
Santa Lucia, or Saint Lucy. Do you know about the Saint Lucy, Joan?
I can't put my finger on it
Because
right now.
it's a
Of course, I've
Catholic,
heard
it's
of
a big
Saint Lucy.
Catholic, it's a saint.
In Sweden, it's very...
In Sweden, it's a big deal.
She may even be the patron saint of Sweden. Wouldn't surprise me.
I'm not,
I
I'm
don't
thinking.
know. Do you know about St. Lucy?
I just happen to know a bunch about it, and then this Swedish friend sent me all this new stuff.
Didn't she wear a halo with candles?
Yes,
Yes.
yes. She wears a headdress of candles,
Right.
and it means that it's appreciation for Saint Lucia, and she is the oldest daughter of the family. She comes out with these candles on her head, and of course you worry about burning people's heads and all that stuff. So now they have these headdresses with these little battery-operated
Electric, battery-operated.
things, and
whatever.
little girls with battery-operated candles.
So the
around
oldest
their head.
girl would dress as St. Lucia? Is
Yeah.
that it? Okay. And come out of the home.
And that's it. You know, they hand out grog and celebrate the season. But what about St. Lucia? And so the story goes that she was betrothed by her mother. Her father had died, and her mother couldn't pass up the opportunity to take the dowry that was offered by a rich non-Christian, and have her marry this non-Christian person. Well, Saint Lucy was very Christian, didn't like it, didn't want to marry him, and the story goes that she was martyred because she wouldn't marry him, And somewhere along the line, her eyes were gouged out, or she gouged out her own eyes and say, these beautiful eyes, I'm not gonna look at you because you're not a Christian, or some story.
Some story, whatever
Okay.
the story would be.
It's a gory, kind of a sad story of a person who lost their vision at this time. And this young woman who had beautiful eyes has become the patron saint of light.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
since this is the season where there is the least amount of light, it is the time that we love the light. One could also take this as the season of vitamin D, because you don't get enough of it, and you need to
we
get more
go from
vitamin
St.
D.
Lucie to vitamin D, but this is how this man's mind works.
So
Very good.
it
So we
is
do need more vitamin D, though, don't we?
We do, and
Yes.
this is also the time when people have the worst time with seasonal affective disorder, where they don't get enough light and they get sad because of it. Seasonal affective disorder spells out sad, but it also means that for many people who don't get enough light, they are sad. Now, we had Dr. Vaca, the psychiatrist, on the other night, and he prescribes a particular light, and he recommends an hour of that light every morning, and you can buy that kind of a light for like less than $1,000, and it's a very bright light that looks like a light that goes on your desk, that
It almost
shines
looks like
on
a
your-
light that you would have on plants to keep them growing in
Right.
the winter.
Mhm.
Right? There was a professor at the university who's since retired and moved from Brookings, but you'd go in his room and that light was lit, and it really helped him. He was fighting that seasonal affective disorder, and it really made a difference for him to have
Right.
that light.
There is this time of the year when we have this automatic time to go hibernate somewhere, go to bed early, sleep late, not be active, turn into a bear in a cave, that type of a thing. But yet we can't do it because oftentimes this is very, very busy time. If you're getting ready for Christmas, if you are involved with any school system, January and February are just
Very busy.
busy time. Particularly if you're a musician, you have to sing. There's all these different kinds of contests that are occurring. Debate goes on full steam ahead. There's the basketball season and so on and so forth. So there's lots to do this time of the year. And my recommendation is that you embrace the doing, and that you don't hibernate, and that you don't just lay around and be sad, but you turn on the light and enjoy it. And this is the time of the year to think about it.
Well, we will. And while we're thinking about it, we're going to take our first break. If you have any questions of Dr. Holm or any comments about seasonal affective disorder, give us a call at 692-1430. We'll be back right after this. Today, Dr. Holm was just talking about something that is quite true this time of year. People can become depressed. It's best not to. It's best to keep at. One way not to is definitely, you've often talked about physical fitness. If you get out and exercise, it really makes a difference in the morning. And if you allow yourself to get outside some, I think the weather's going to be warmer and more conducive. This little icy stuff is getting nerve-wracking, though.
You've got to be very careful.
It's thin.
It was
and
slippery right outside this door, right here.
Right, and they'll
Very,
put
very
salt
slippery.
out, but somehow, it's just...
It melts and then it
yeah.
freezes and then it melts and then it freezes
It's
some
an
more.
odd time. Normally, we just have a good layer of snow.
Very dangerous. If
not
you
this
were predicting that there are people listening right now who are going to fall and break their arms, they're going to fall and break their hips, and I would say don't let that happen. Be careful. This is, do not take those risks. Be very, very careful, and use a lot of this melt stuff. And if you feel like you're uncomfortable walking on this area, have a bag of that melt stuff with you and throw it out in front of you so that you're walking on.
As you walk, throw the melt out.
Really,
right?
you do not want to fall because you can have terrible injury. So I had a person who was asking me about snoring, and there are some interesting things, particularly with metabolic syndrome. People who are a bit overweight, people who are getting older and their tissues are getting softer and more lax and relaxed, they start snoring more. And when you snore, it's an indicator that there's a possibility of obstruction of your airway. And if you obstruct your airway at night, it keeps you from sleeping well. It keeps you from getting oxygenation part of the night. And to be honest with you, that's the biggest risk factor for coronary disease. And it's unrecognized, and it's a real deal. People die of heart attacks and strokes, and those are preventable if you can give them decent airway at night. And so if you suspect that your spouse is possibly obstructing, they've gained weight, their blood pressure is elevated, they're snoring loud, you've heard them have apneic spells where they don't breathe regularly, they stop breathing in the night, get to the doctor and say, and go in the room with your spouse and say, this person, he or she is at risk for sleep apnea. Could you test him? And there are ways to do that. One easy way is an O2 sat monitor through the night. You just take this little device on your finger on home, you sleep with it, the next morning you bring it back. It's a cheap sleep study. And if you definitely drop your oxygen in the night, then you do the full sleep study, and CPAP is definitely a way to handle that.
You've heard people who have gotten this sleep apnea test and gotten this sleep. What's the apparatus? What is it called?
Well, a CPAP is
A
one way to do
CPAP,
it.
and many of them are just thrilled with it, and their life has changed. Others put it under the bed or something. What
Right.
can you tell the people that have already had that test? They know they have sleep apnea, but they're not using that machine. What should they do? Come back?
Realize, well, if it isn't working for them, keep pushing this respiratory therapy people or the home medical people to find something that works for you, because it
There are
is so
different
very
ones, aren't there?
important. Yeah.
Yeah, there
Let
are
me-
different ones, and it's important from
Yeah.
what you've said.
Listen, do you know that if I have had a heart attack and I take a lipid-lowering drug, it reduces my death rate by 1% or less? I mean, it's not much, right? If you have severe sleep apnea over a 13-year period of time, if you treat severe sleep apnea with CPAP, it reduces your death rate by 500%.
500% reduction in death rate.
The
That's
studies in
unreal.
Australia said that the death rate in a 13-year period of time in people who were 30 to 65 were 6% if you didn't have sleep apnea, and 33% if you had it. And if you look at the difference between 6% and 33%, that's 500% difference. That's how they use those percentages. It's a 500% increased death rate, and you reverse that if your CPAP is workable. The problem is 20% of the people can use the CPAP, 30%, and 70% put it under the bed and don't tell the doctor,
Well, if you're one of those people, this is a good New Year's resolution for you. Get into your doctor or whoever prescribed that CPAP and say, this machine isn't working. I want to live a little longer. What can we do instead of this? And
the
there
answer
are
is-
different things.
Well, the different things are for mild sleep apnea. The jaw thrust devices, the teeth things that you can put in. If you're a person who happens to have this really floppy uvula. The thing that hangs down in the back of your throat, and the back tissue
Yes.
is really floppy, and that's what's giving you this really funny, weird, snoring, flappy thing that happens. I have had one patient, I did had a uvulaectomy done on him, and the problem went away.
Wow.
So there's certain
There are things that can-
pharyngeal surgeries you can do, but remember, those are pretty painful.
But aren't there different covers for your face for that CPAP? You don't all have the same cover?
Right. Many
So
people-
maybe if one that's just when your nose isn't working, another one might work better.
Right.
It's worth finding out. If you've been prescribed with it, get to the doctor and use the thing. Figure out how you can use
Yeah.
it. We're going to take a break now. We'll be back right after these words. I- Well, every time we return, we're a little bit closer to Christmas, aren't we?
We are getting closer,
We're closer
by
the
the
minute.
second.
Right. Have you done all your baking yet, Rick?
I've done. I have been giving away hot pepper sauce. Did I give you my pepper
I
sauce?
did not get your
Bob,
hot
do you
pepper
like hot
sauce.
pepper sauce? No. And I also made horseradish sauce.
Oh, now you
And
can
I've
put me
given
on the
almost-
list for the horseradish.
Almost
it's
all my
gone?
horseradish is
Oh,
gone.
I love that horse. Well, you think about me
Really?
next year for the horseradish sauce. I like horseradish sauce.
Now
I
you
really
tell
do.
my wife, because she said nobody wants this horseradish sauce. Boy, I had no problem getting rid of the horseradish sauce.
Oh, that's good stuff.
But the hot pepper sauce has been, I had a wonderful bumper crop. I've got so much hot sauce, you can't, I could burn up the town of Chicago.
I'll bet you could with your hot pepper sauce.
But, so, let's talk about, I'm reading about meningitis, because on the 28th of December, we're going to have an expert, a neurologist come, and he's bringing with him an infectious disease specialist. So these two people, to me, make the perfect reason to write about meningitis.
Were you saying December or January 28th?
January 28th.
January. I didn't think it was
So it's
December.
interesting.
January 28th.
We're going to have January 21st, we're going to have a show on nasal congestion with a guest person filling in for me. Dr. Tom Luzier will be my guest host. And a week earlier than that, on the 14th, we're going to have a pre-recorded Tom Daschle show, because we had him and recorded a great interview with him. And we've got another interview, a short interview that followed in response to the Daschle show with Tom Dean. And so it's all about where we're at with the ACA, with the Obamacare, and that's a fascinating watch. So
Good.
that's what's coming up. But on the 28th is meningitis. Well, actually, it's infectious disease and neurology, all things that you might want to ask. And so I wrote about meningitis. And so are you interested in learning about meningitis this morning, Joe?
I am. Tell me about meningitis.
So what do you think meningitis is?
It is swelling on the brain? Is that it? No?
Well, it can definitely cause
Be that?
swelling on the brain, but it's an infection in the central spinal
In your
fluid
spinal column? Or
and the spinal column and the brain. But the meninges, meningitis, is that tough raincoat that surrounds the brain and extends around the brain and all the way down the spinal cord. So there's this raincoat that covers our central nervous system that includes the brain, extends itself all the way down the spinal cord. And when you do a spinal tap, you put a needle through that tough membrane into the fluid, the bath of the spinal cord, and it tests that fluid to see if there's an infection.
So the infection is in the fluid, not in the meninges.
Well, the meninges.
Meninges.
The meninges or the meningitides are is that coating, and if it gets inflamed, then you get rigid, and so that's that classic reason why they call it spinal meningitis. The meninges is inflamed and irritated, and so. But what it really is in the fluid. It's in the fluid that's bathing the brain and the spine.
So that's why it's a problem. Major problem.
Well, it kills you really quick.
What can you do about it?
You treat it
And
with antibiotics.
How do you get it? How do you get it?
You get it, let me put it this way. There are a lot of kinds of infections that can infect that fluid. Okay? But the worst kind are bacterial infections that can just, it'll get you very quickly. And the classic bacteria that's dangerous is Neisseria meningitidis, which is a kind of an infection that is like strep pneumoniae or like Haemophilus influenza, very aggressive bacteria that will kill you, particularly if it gets into that CSF, into that fluid. And those kinds of meningitises are markedly less now since we've come up with, first with antibiotics, and second with vaccinations.
And they both really help. While you were talking about this, we had a mother call in, and she said her daughter had meningitis at 6 months. Can she get it again? 6 months? I didn't even know
Well, it depends upon what kind of meningitis she had. Now, I don't know how old the daughter is now. Did it
No,
say?
she just said at 6 months she had it, so we don't know how old she is.
So we used to have, little kids would come in with Haemophilus influenza. Now, this is not influenza. This is not the virus flu. This is a bacteria called Haemophilus influenza, which is it's too bad that the names are so similar because they're very different. It's bacteria. And lots of kids would get ear infections from H. influenza. And then the Haemophilus would spread into the central spinal fluid, and then they would get meningitis and die from it. And since we've had the onset of vaccinations, we haven't had it. Now, if she had Haemophilus influenza, this is my guess, bacteria, spinal meningitis, she has she's immune against it, that very kind. But it may well be that it's a different kind of influenza that
so
might
whatever
occur.
she had, she is immune against.
Right.
But
The problem
she
is
could have
that there are
another
other
form.
brands of even Haemophilus influenza that can do it. And that's why you want to have the vaccination to cover the broader area. Now, let's say you take pneumonia vaccine, that's Streptococcus pneumoniae. It's a strep infection. So, Streptococcus pneumoniae, you get a vaccination for that called Prevnar as a kid. That covers 13 brands of that particular bacteria. If you get the Pneumovax, which is the old pneumonia vaccine that we've been giving the older people, it covers 23 brands. Now we're recommending that people get the 23 branded Pneumovax, and a year later get the 13 Prevnar. Now, there's about 4 or 5 of them in there that are crossed, that they occur in both vaccinations. But there's a broader group if you do both. So right now, everybody's being recommended to have both.
So you're safe against quite a few different
kinds
infections.
of Streptococcus pneumoniae.
Wow.
Which is, so what is strep infection of the throat? Well, that's another version of Streptococcus pneumoniae. So anyway, the old classic meningitis was the kind that would hit the army barracks, it would hit the college classrooms and the high school classrooms, and it would hit people who were typically immune competent, healthy as horses, and it would spread like wildfire through those kinds of places. And it would be sporadic. This kid would suddenly die. This kid would suddenly die. This kid would be fine, because they had it when they were younger in a different version, maybe in a hand infection, and then their immunity protected them. But
Okay.
a lot of people, particularly as we got cleaner and we were safer in a cleaner world, we didn't have the immunity, and the vaccination that we've been able to develop has saved us. So certainly if your kid is going to college and hasn't been vaccinated already,
This is pretty important.
get the Neisseria meningitidis vaccination and prevent them from, and help protect them from that particular meningitis. Now, I'll make one caveat, one warning. None of these are perfect. There was a young man who died of meningitis this last year. And of course, Joni took it as an editorial to recommend to everybody that they should get their meningitis vaccine when they're going to college. But the story, we got a call from the family who said he had his vaccine
Oh my goodness, and he's still got
and
it.
he still died. And
So-
so nothing is perfect.
No.
That's the other take-home message. And that's my editorial this week. This morning I've just finished it and sent it off, so we'll
So that's
hear
your
that.
editorial,
That will come
meningitis.
in
And
the end
that'll
of
come in
January. You'll hear that.
Okay. Well, I know people
essay.
that listen to this program really enjoy watching the program Thursday night, so they can look forward to that in January. We're going to take our final break. We'll be back right after this words.
Clear.
Doc Radio, Dr. Holm and I just have about 2 minutes left, and I would like to take half a minute to thank all of you for listening and wish you all a really Merry Christmas. We appreciate, without this audience, we don't have a show, and we've done this a few years. I ran into an old friend of both of ours, Betty Gerberdine, yesterday.
Yes.
She said, "How long have you two been doing that show? Are you still doing that?" I said, "Well, tune in Wednesdays."
More
for
than
years."
25 years.
I think so. We
Yeah.
should get a date down. I can't even think when we started. It has
I-
to be at least 25
I
years.
keep saying 25 years.
25's a good one.
25 years.
25
Think about
years, and both of us stayed so young. That's what I
Yeah,
can't
that's
get
an
over.
amazing part
Yeah,
of it. You
yeah,
know?
yeah.
I would say that this is the time of the year that you have hope for the future. And I think we all do really well if we fill our hearts with hope. We do better. I mean, there's all sorts of tragedies and sad things that can and do happen to us. We do better if we have hope. So let
Makes
that
a
hope
huge
part
difference.
of your brain expand and swell and let it happen. Fill the heart with hope. And I am hopeful for all of you and for Bob and Joan and our families that we have a wonderful year and a very Merry Christmas, and let that hope bring you home.
Sounds great. I have nothing to add to that other than we hope to see you. We hope to see you next week, and we do hope
Yeah.
that you have a wonderful Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas to all, and stay healthy out there, people.
That's the best.